Thank you. Welcome everyone to the August 12th Planning Board meeting. It's now 7 p.m. I'm going to take roll call. David Kriegel.
Here.
David Austin.
Present.
Marcus Kasich.
Here.
Julia Weisenberg is here. Matthew Fox.
Here.
Sean Davey.
Present.
Greg Cranford.
Here.
And then we also have present, obviously, Rick Whalen, our planning board attorney, and we have Rick Wesnowski, our engineer. Is that okay? Oh, Rick? No, it's, yeah. Rick and Rick.
Because you could get either one of us.
Rick and Rick, okay. All right, first order of business is we're going to approve, we have two bills. One is,
Minutes.
oh, sorry, thank you. Everyone got the minutes circulated by Christina. Did anyone have any discussion or edits or anything that? If not, then I would recommend a motion to approve these minutes from the July 8th meeting. A second from Matt Fox. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Next, our bills from the Rayner Group. This was for the month of June for the amount of $650. And looking over the bill, the bulk of it was the seeker lead agency letters, which our engineering firm sent out on our behalf, and attendance at one meeting. Again, that was for $650. I'm going to put these two together and then make the motion. Okay, the second one is from the Whalen Feeler Group. That's our town attorney. And when we looked at that bill, I just always like to have a little explanation of what it is. So the bulk of that was in-person meetings here at our planning board in June. And there was a little bit of some residual work on the Borough Hall deeds. And so that was the bulk of that. And the rest were pretty ancillary things that were under $100. So that total bill was $1,394. So we need a motion again to approve the Rayner Group for $650 and the Whalen Feeler bill for $1,394.
Motion to approve.
Sean, and a second. David Kriegel, or David Austin could battle it out. All in favor then?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that motion carried. Okay. Now we have, according to this, we have 4 things to act on, but it's actually going to be 2, and we'll explain why. So the first thing is the Bloom extension request. You'll recall that the Blooms are now trying to work on having their water hookup from Suffolk County Water Authority, which would be as part of the West Neck Public Water System, rather than trying to go the avenue of getting a new private well, which would hold them up even more. So that is not totally finalized yet, but we're very close. So I asked Rick Whalen to prepare an extension for them. They have had other extensions, one in 2022, 2 in 23. This would be the third in 24, in 25, and they had 1 in 24. But I think we're actually getting quite close to seeing this off the agenda. So basically, we're just going to give them an extension. And can I get a motion to approve the Bloom extension?
I'll make a motion to Bloom extension.
Okay, Marcus, thank you. And a second?
I'll second it.
Matthew Fox, a second. All in favor on that?
Aye.
Okay, that motion carried. That. All right. I'm just going to jump down everyone to the third resolution. It's actually not a resolution itself, but I just want to clarify that we were declared lead agency. And just as a follow-up, I'm sure everyone saw, but just so the public knows, we received all the necessary responses from Suffolk County Health Department, DEC, and Suffolk County Planning Authority, who all said, yes, they have no trouble with our becoming lead agency. So those are all documented, and you saw them. They were, if you didn't see them, they're in the record. So. Now, going back to the second one, the Fowler Trust Major Subdivision Extension request, we did receive a request from Carl. He's online right now on Zoom. And our attorney, Rick, is going to explain, based on your analysis interpretation, that we may not actually need to, even though they asked for an extension, it may not be necessary. So Rick, could you explain?
I haven't called Carl, so Carl hasn't heard this, but.
Okay.
So I was preparing the resolution. I'm getting down to the end of the resolution. I started asking, what are we doing an extension for? You granted the sketch plan approval in February. A
Right,
condition of requirement under the town code of sketch plan approval is that within 6 months of sketch plan approval, the applicant is required to submit, it could be a minor subdivision, it would be a minor subdivision approval. In this case, it's a major subdivision, so the next step, or the first major step in a major subdivision is a preliminary application. But check with Rick, they have submitted a preliminary subdivision application and did so within 6 months. So the bottom line is, they met the requirements of the sketch plan approval, no extension of time is required.
right.
We now have a pending preliminary subdivision application.
What's the time frame on that? Is there also a time frame that they have to do that?
Okay, so they don't have approval yet for preliminary, so
Got it.
preliminary approval, there's no time frame, right? But I do want you to be aware, I was gonna mention this when when you make your secret declaration, with subdivisions, not lot line modifications, but with subdivisions. It could be a minor subdivision, not sketch plan, but a minor subdivision or a preliminary or final subdivision. Those are things recognized in New York town law. You have to always be aware with subdivisions that from the submission of the applicant, from the time that the application is deemed complete, if it's a preliminary or it's a minor, and you're holding a hearing on the minor, you have 62 days in which to hold a public hearing. Not schedule it, hold the public hearing. And because you only meet once a month, you have to be very careful in that. And the reason you gotta be careful on it is that in the New York town law for subdivisions, if you fail to meet one of the two deadlines basically are, you have 62 days from the time that an application is deemed complete to hold the public hearing. Once you've held the public hearing, you have 62 days in which to render a decision. If you don't do either of those things, the applicant is entitled to a default approval. You don't want to be giving default approvals.
Right.
So it's very important to be aware of that. And in fact, I'll just mention now, it's a turn to it, on Fallon, if you're making your secret declaration tonight, that you're not, the application won't be deemed complete until there's a secret declaration. But I believe we're probably complete in terms of information on that one, as far as I know. So once you make your secret declaration, then the time clock is running. If we don't have a resolution to schedule a hearing tonight, we'll do one, if you make your secret declaration, and you make a negative declaration, we'll do a scheduled public hearing resolution at the next meeting, and we have to hold the hearing at the following meeting after that. It's supposed to be within 62 days after tonight. So always be aware in subdivisions that once you get into completeness territory, there's a state time clock that if you fail to meet it, is entitled the applicant to a default approval.
But holding it at our October meeting would still be sufficient.
I didn't check the actual calendar date to make sure you're not,
Rick, I would waive to allow them to do that.
right, and if you're close, you can ask Carl if he'll waive that.
Okay. All right. But as it stands right now, then that's what we should aim for, having it scheduled for September, and it takes place in October.
Correct.
So I just wanted to check, because it was on the agenda as an official extension, but based on the discussion now, is everyone okay with that? We're not really necessarily ending it?
That makes
Okay.
sense. Do we have a manner of keeping track of those kinds of dates? Besides relying on your good eye or Christina's good eye, or like, is there anything?
It's clear, yeah,
Yeah. Fortunately, you don't have that many subdivisions probably,
right.
and that's the saving grace. If you have a lot,
All right, but thanks for catching that, Rick. We do appreciate that. Okay, so the fourth one down then is basically, as Rick just explained, the next step in that step is to go ahead with our secret declaration. So everyone, that all went out to you, and so I'm gonna open it up. And I know a few of you wrote to me and asked that, you had some questions for Rick Wisnowski, who's here. So if you have anything you want to ask him.
I had a lot of questions, so if anyone
Yeah.
else has a few questions.
Jump on in.
I read through this pretty carefully and read through your kind of narrative. And I'm not totally familiar with the criteria for these things, but a lot of the questions are very subjective. So let me just read the ones I made comments on, and you can talk about why you may have decided one way or another. And the impact on land, D is the proposed action may involve the excavation or removal of more than 1,000 tons of material. And you said, well, no. And I wasn't sure, I mean, if, this goes to a bigger question is, are we really ruling on the situation where all 5 lots are developed?
That's what we're, so.
So, I mean, the worst case is somebody, each of these 5 lots has a 6,000 square foot house and a large accessory building, unless they change the rule. All right, so we have 30,000 square feet of construction. I won't go into what the footprint is or how deep the basement and how many dump trucks and tons of fill it is. But I can't say it's definitely not 1,000 tons.
This one, it has more to do with like mining and dredging. If you look at the DEC EAF workbook.
Well, that's what I didn't do, so that's why I need you to explain it.
And so I went through that, and it has what actions are considered no or small impacts, and then what would be considered moderate or large.
So, I mean, it simply says 1,000 tons of material. It doesn't say used for a certain thing, plus a swimming pool, which is, another 5 swimming pools is another, Lord knows. I mean, the dump truck is what, 70 cubic yards or something? I don't remember exactly. 40 yards. So, you get 50, 75 dump trucks, you're at 1,000 tons probably.
Well, that's not 1,000 tons, that's 1,000 cubic yards.
Right, no.
1,000 tons is.
So I went and did the math and how many dump trucks it was, and living across from a subdivision and counting dump trucks on days when I had nothing better to do, you could have 20 or 30 dump trucks in a day, for going on for a week. So it's possible. Whether that has a great impact on the land, I have no idea. So, all right, that's one thing. The next was proposed action may involve construction that continues for more than 1 year or in multiple phases. Absolutely. I mean, the pace of construction on Shelter Island, nobody builds a house in under 2 or 2.5 years. And if they do them sequentially, we're talking about over 10 years of continual construction. And again, living across the street from now 6 years of continual construction, it's not pretty. And I think that has an impact, and and of course, we have no ability to say the sequence or timing or phasing of construction, but it's a concern. If I lived on Nostrand Parkway and knew I was looking at 10 years of construction at, 100 trips a day, it's meaningful on a nice, quiet street. Again, I don't know how we weigh these things, but the point is there's some subjectivity to this.
Let me just say something about the Form PAF. First of all, the state environmental assessment form, part 2, is not well written, all right? The test that you're really supposed to be looking at for secret is whether or not there is a potentially a significant negative impact, which would be a large impact. If you have a potential for a significant adverse impact, what do you have to do? Positive declaration for a DIS. The form is set up, it says, there's 2 categories here. No or small impact may occur. Okay, that's fine. Moderate to large impact, or that shouldn't be together. Moderate will not trigger a DIS, a large impact will. So it's kind of, the form isn't well set up. But the real question is, all of these things you talk about, well, the impacts, is it a significant, significant adverse impact? And if it is, or potentially significant adverse impact, then you would require a DIS, the positive declaration.
So there should be a scorecard, and if you reach 50 points or whatever, then it triggers it. But there's no way to kind of do
But
a
it is
cumulative
subjective.
score.
It is subjective.
Gentlemen, can I offer just some advice here? This might help you. When I started going through it, what I did was I looked up what constitutes a positive declaration, just so I can have the 2 in my mind. Of course, that's not on the sheets that we got, but I just did research. So for example, this may help, okay? Applications that are deemed positive declaration, okay? Things like where the subdivision has extensive wetland impacts. I'm just gonna go through all of them. Increased flooding, loss of endangered habitat, infrastructure expansion. That usually doesn't happen in residential cases, but could be in more urban cases. Sewer, water, and transportation effects, more impervious surfaces, possible groundwater contamination, critical habitat loss, loss of biodiversity, death of protected species, federally mapped 100-year floodplain, okay, which is actually on that map, okay? And then traffic patterns impacted and community character. So I had those things in front of me as I read through, just to have it clear in my own mind. So maybe like that would help you having those criteria. And then the second thing in talking to Rick is that all the concerns that we have, some of these things that we're talking about, because I'm on your page, I was thinking impervious, like I just imagine every lot being expanded to its maximal potential, tennis courts, pools, everything, okay? And what that would do to the groundwater and irrigation on all those well-manicured lawns, right? The thing is, our concerns can still be somehow put in as possible restrictions to the subdivision when it happens. It doesn't mean that if we vote on a negative declaration that all those things just get tossed out, or that, it doesn't preclude us from still imposing things on it. So just keep that in mind when you're going through it.
Yeah.
If I'm not correct, tell me, okay.
I have a couple more questions, really, if I can. Increased erosion, physical disturbance. I mean, you can't do that much excavation and not have physical disturbance. Vegetation removal, which clearly again, the worst case, what if people want 3-acre lawns minus our little 50-foot buffer? They could do that until you get to the wetland setback. So there could be a tremendous amount of clearing if people wanted to do it. Let's see. Impacts on surface water, will it cause soil erosion, other stormwater discharge? It really depends on the percentage of lot clearing. And as far as I can tell, Shelter Island Code doesn't really limit lot clearing except in the wetlands buffer.
Nope.
And it's unclear in the 50-foot buffer we were asking for, and they showed what their restrictions are.
Will get put in what restrictions?
We're going to be putting those in, or at
Right,
least
yeah.
assume we're going to be putting,
Yeah.
Assume you're
Yeah.
we're going to put those,
easy.
yeah.
Wouldn't allow
Yeah,
it.
wouldn't allow any clearing.
That was actually discussed.
Routine maintenance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that was actually discussed, David, at not this past meeting, but the meeting before.
Yeah, I-
We offered that.
I vaguely remember that. Let's see. Impact on plants and animals. Again, we can't say if it's going to affect habitat because we don't know how much clearing is proposed unless we actually set some sort of scientific restriction on how much clearing, we can permit to sustain habitat. But I don't know what that dimension is. And I know it's quantified.
Yeah.
If you clear more than a certain, then the birds go away.
And are we allowed to put a percentage of lot clearance as a condition?
I think no, but Rick, the only thing that we can do is on
You
that.
can impose reasonable conditions on the subdivision. The problem with the clearing, I think, would be you probably have a hard time coming up with a number and justifying the number.
And then
Shelter Ground, as David indicated, Shelter Ground does not have clearing restrictions.
So there's nobody going to.
Theoretically, you can clear virtually the whole property right now, except, as you said, within wetland jurisdiction. Somebody,
I think it'd be subject to kind of a reasonableness test of they want to do something and we're saying, hey, you can do that, but in order to kind of even out the field, we would require this, but we don't know of them doing anything in that regard.
But I think the most control we have is on that conservation easement. That's where we can, on the conservation easement, that's where we have the most control.
In the wetlands.
couple things.
The
First,
wetlands.
First of all, bear in mind, the applicant is reducing density by 2 lots. So you're getting 2 less houses that they would be entitled to. The other thing too is, I would suggest that you do something about the 100-foot bluff setback and that you prohibit construction within that area. And that would be if you agree to do that, if you decide to do that, that would be a condition. Remember, these will be conditions of your final approval. You know, you don't impose them now, it's your preliminary, but that's the kind of thing that you could impose.
The reason I'm asking the question, sort of triggered by David's comment, is I have continued to be concerned about something that was brought up at, I don't know if it was the previous meeting, when we discussed this previously. And it involved a 25-foot setback for structures, which really, the 25 with 50 variable, 50 to 55.
Front yard setback, you're talking.
Yeah, it's just, one of the things we've talked about is maintaining the tree line character of the district. And I just remain concerned that the 25-foot setback, unless, I don't know, I just am not convinced that that is sufficient, considering the size of the properties and maintaining the character of Nostrand as a tree-lined parkway. I bring that up because of its comment.
I think,
There's a 50-foot buffer before that setback.
I'm sorry, Carl, I missed the beginning of your sentence.
Sorry, yeah, I'm sorry. Carl Benacasa, 860 Montauk Highway, Watermill, New York. There's a 50-foot wooded buffer before that setback.
Yes, I'm aware. I'm just questioning the aggregate number if the 50 plus the 25.
Well, by the way, just to be clear about that, you could clear within the 25 foot.
Just can't put it-
That is precisely why I'm asking
So
the
it could be
question.
lawn, it just can't be a structure. Right?
We would agree to extending the wooded portion or the vegetated portion by 10 feet so that the setback would only be, so that the buffer would be essentially 60 feet and the setback would only be 15. We just would want, and I've talked to the clients about this, the ability during construction to disturb it, and then we would try to avoid doing that, but if we did, to revegetate after construction, that portion.
I think the reality is that these lots are roughly 450 feet from the bluff to the road. Anyone building a waterfront house is going to push it as close as they possibly can to the water. And
That's not true, and that's not the plan here. So it's not fair to make that assumption.
well, they haven't designed all the houses yet, have they?
They have not, no.
Okay. So
But I think
But again,
Carl's
it's
comment
really
is
not
fair.
fair to make that assumption.
only
why I'm
based
asking-
on observation, and I don't know the clients, and they may have other ideas. I mean, that said, having seen houses firsthand in Montauk and in East Hampton, Northwest Woods, that were built as close as they could to the bluffs, and then they realized they were losing 5 to 10 feet per year. And I'm sure you've seen places where people are picking up their houses and moving them because of erosion. I mean, I did look at that bluff line as far as I could go back in aerial views, and I didn't see any change. So that may be a fairly stable area. But so given what you're saying, that they don't want to build close to the bluff, would you entertain a greater than 100-foot setback from the bluff?
No, I don't, we're gonna follow what the code says, but I don't think it's fair to say that their envelope should be limited because you're presuming that they'll build close to the water. I think, in line with what the code requires, and actually in excess of what the code requires, we're willing to preserve that wooded corridor. I think there's value to it, to my clients in addition to the board. And when we were last here, we discussed sort of expanding that vegetated area into the setback. And we're willing to do that.
You're talking about on the roadside now, not the bluff.
That's on the road
No,
side.
That's what
on the
that's what
bluff side.
I'm talking about the roadside. And
The roadside?
I'm talking about
Conservation.
Nostrand Parkway, vegetated, open space side of the property.
Right, so this morphed into another discussion with my point, but
Yeah, I brought it up because of David's point. I'm talking about the area that's the open space along the roadside of the properties, Carl.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
You
too.
and I are talking about the same thing.
Yes.
But what my question was, and maybe I'm not being very articulate, I just am concerned that the aggregate of the 55 and the 25 doesn't necessarily protect that tree-lined corridor sufficiently. I'm just raising the question. Everyone else might think that it's fine.
I agree,
I
50
brought it up
50.
at the last time we
Brought up what-
talked about it.
50 feet is small.
And I
feet is two
continue to
trees.
be concerned about it. I just,
No.
I don't think it is sufficient. And the other thing that I think is the 25-foot setback. If that is lawn, theoretically, could be lawn. I think that further concerns me in terms of maintaining that the character that's there. Now, maybe the character that's there doesn't need to remain. I'm bringing up the issue as if it did need to remain. If you look at the eastern end of Nostrand, where it runs into Bootlegger's Alley, it's all been denuded of trees and has a different quality. But I think it bears the question if the natural topography of the property is desirable. Is the 80 feet in aggregate, is that sufficient? If the 25 is sufficient, then maybe it should also be, maybe there should be a vegetation requirement as well. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and
I'm just concerned.
What I was saying is we're
about-
willing to entertain that. Expanding the buffer into the setback so that there's less of a setback and more of a buffer.
Well,
But
I
wait, can I
spoke
just,
with
yeah,
with my clients about that.
Carl, just to make sure I heard you correctly, so you're saying that aside from the 50-foot conservation easement, they'd also be willing to come in 10 feet more into that 25, is what you said?
Yeah, exactly. So the
So we were
setback,
already beyond that. Yeah. I thought that in the last conversation, we said that 25 would stay wooded.
That's what I thought.
And that, so that we were debating and that we were debating
no, that's not,
what that 25, didn't need to become part of the conservation easement. We could just put some clause in there. I thought in the last conversation, you were amenable to that and it wasn't just 10 feet of that, it was, we have no problem with expanding that buffer of tree line area essentially to 80 clean, not touching the trees. I thought that was where we left the
So, Carl,
conversation.
it would remain the setback, but it would just be vegetated, the full 25 feet, not just half of it as your
well, no, that's,
buffer.
I don't, there may have been a miscommunication if that's the board's
So
position.
can I just, can I add to this? So that was part of our discussion, but I have a good memory and they actually didn't agree.
agree.
They didn't agree.
Okay.
We discussed it and we all were.
We all agree. Well,
We all agree.
I don't know.
Fair enough. I mean, I thought he was
Even
part of the
though we all-
conversation and he kind of nodded or gave his whatever, so understood.
Fair
enough, fair enough, I think.
I'm just raising
That was something
my
that,
concern.
right, that was
You
something
know, if
that,
anyone else has the concern. I
it
put
seemed,
it on the
it seemed that the majority of our board was trying to
Felt that
lean
that
that
was-
way,
yes.
but we
Gotcha.
did talk about the fact that it could be grass. I mean,
Yeah.
that it just could be lawn and not necessarily.
No, I think that was where my comfort was and that 80 feet is clean wooded area, not grass, not disturbed and replanted.
And I agree with
not,
Sean.
you know, whatever. To me, that's clean, that's good. You know, I'm on board. I think if we start talking about 10 feet of it, replanting 15, I think you're talking about a very short area and it would make me a lot more uncomfortable.
I think,
Keeping it shorter.
Keeping it shorter, yeah.
Julia, the other
And I
reason,
apologize if we assumed that we thought you were on board with that, and fair enough, you know,
Yeah, we were never,
Yeah.
we had never offered that, but that's fair.
Greg, yes.
the other reason I bring it up is, as Sean comments, the topography is quite important as part of the contributing aspect of the character along that portion of Nostrand. So I feel that the 80 feet is extremely important. And it can remain as the structure setback line as it's currently noted. But I would feel more comfortable if it remained a vegetated setback and not topographically altered significantly and not long. I just don't think 50 feet is sufficient.
Rick, can I ask you, since they've satisfied the park requirement / conservation portion of it by having that 50 feet in front, is there any legal authority for us to extend that
Yes.
on the basis of a subdivision?
You have the power to, and I'm not weighing in on the pros and cons,
Yeah.
I'm talking about. But a general principle, you can impose conditions on a subdivision that the applicant does not agree to. You have inherent power to impose reasonable restrictions.
Just want to double check.
Yeah, I think the issue.
There has to be a nexus to the relief.
I think, Carl, what I'm hearing some of the board members say is that their nexus is community character, maintain the scenic appearance of Nostrand Parkway. That would be the basis for the
Yeah.
condition.
And that would be out of the current comprehensive plan, which does name that condition. So.
The issue with this site is that the street frontage is about 700 and some odd feet long. So if you take the acre and a half roughly of set aside and stretch it out over this length, it becomes a very skinny piece, which is why the formula for parkland, I think, was conceived of as a continuous sort of square piece roughly.
Yeah.
I mean, if this lot was, a mile long, then you would have a 10-foot setback,
That's where I thought that kind of, and I, again, Carl, pardon us if we were talking among ourselves, and because I think we'll eventually, my guess is that we'll all get to a comfortable place. That I thought that was part of our conversation, and unfortunately it might have been among ourselves, is that, stretching it thin in the parkland is somewhat of an accommodation in the way we're thinking about it. If they could give us a thicker buffer, we could get comfortable. So I guess, Carl, and maybe it's not that you can give an answer now, because appropriately so, that you have, hey, pushback on, we don't necessarily want to give something away, but can they go back and look at what they think they want to do with the property, and knowing the importance that the town is placing on the forestry, the vegetation, what can they feel that they can reasonably offer to kind of help create that environment and protect that scenic view?
Sure. So I had that conversation with them, and they were open to expanding, as I mentioned. Again, forgive me, there was a miscommunication. I didn't understand that you wanted the whole buffer always vegetated, which could pose difficulty for their development plans, provided, but we could talk about removal for development and revegetation. That was something they were certainly open to. But it wasn't like I was met with an absolute no. So I will carry your thoughts to them, and I know that the proposal they had authorized me to make is being updated, or the plan's being updated in line with that. So I will speak to them as soon as I can to see if there's anything more that they'd be comfortable offering.
Well, it's only 15 feet more than you have a tacit agreement on already.
But fair enough if you need to have that conversation, and I'd be surprised.
Oh,
And again, I don't know
have
where,
that
I don't know how they're laying out their property. I'd be surprised that they feel, well, gee, we would revegetate it, but we really needed to maneuver to do what we want to do. I'd be surprised, because it's really not that thick in compared to how deep the property is. But if you would take a look at it, and then let's just have another conversation. I think we'll get there. I think you guys are trying to do the right thing generally and in the right place. We just, we're looking for a little more comfort.
And then
I appreciate that.
just to bring everybody back again, we do have to work on either the positive or the negative, assuming a negative declaration. That's actually what we're supposed to be talking about right now.
Yes.
I just don't want us to go around in circles.
Yeah.
I think this is important that you just ask them again what they're willing to do. And just again, for the record, they did offer another 10. I think we have to, be fair to the applicant too, and that they're coming back in September and we
Yeah.
have to schedule a public hearing, so,
Yeah.
I just.
I don't have any problem with the negative declaration. I appreciate the nuances of, as he's raising, when you look at something that is so preserved, then gee, it seems like a lot of disruption, but I think what the boundaries of what that really are is that it's a negative declaration.
Yeah, and if we get to this point, we can reach your issue and
Yes.
all of our frontage. Anyone else, Marcus or anybody, David on the EAFs 2 and
Just to
3?
be clear,
Yeah.
we should call it undisturbed, not vegetative, because that could be confused with tearing it down and finding out what's there.
What you're asking.
Exactly, yes.
I would also say, I would only ask one thing, Sean, which is to not say things to anybody with we, because we haven't voted on everything.
Fair enough.
So speak in I
Yeah.
terms.
Fair enough. Appreciate that. Thank you.
I did have a couple, again, to the subjectivity in it. And in some of the narrative, we're essentially applauding their decision to do 5 lots. And I feel like it's not necessarily our place to pat them on the back for doing it. Because 6,000 square foot houses could be more disturbing than 7 2,000 square foot houses. I mean, you can do the math. So the number 5 versus 7 is no guarantee that it's going to have more or less of a positive or negative impact. I mean, you could end up with 30 bathrooms on the site, and that's what's critical. So that's why it's really hard to do these things without knowing what's being proposed in terms of the scale of the houses and the scale of the lot development.
But
You
at
can
the-
just hope based
But
on the.
At the time that they go to the health department for approval, that's how they're going to do their calculations. They're going to do it on bedroom and bathrooms. So if a house at some point is going to have 30 bathrooms, it'll come out later. But when they do their calculations, they'll base it on lots and what could be potentially built there. But it won't include things like pools and tennis courts and whatever. It'll just be dwellings and bedroom potentials.
Okay.
But I feel like the concerns that some of us may have, could be about the frontage on the water and setback by Nostrand Avenue. And those are things that I think can come out as we get closer to either putting stipulations on the subdivision, not necessarily what's going into the seeker negative declaration.
That's fair.
So do we feel like we're at a point where we can just go ahead and take a vote on negative declaration?
Comfortable with that?
So in this case, it would be you're answering in the affirmative, right? Because you're going for a negative declaration, right?
Right, now, the negative declaration has no environmental impact statement.
No environmental impact statement. So I would like to make a motion then that this Fowler Trust major subdivision should be deemed a negative declaration.
Second thing.
Second on David Austin. So all in favor of having it as such? Aye. Okay, that motion carried 7-0.
You just need to record that in your minutes that you.
Yeah.
Motion second, vote.
Yep.
Very negative.
By the way, the next meeting is 63 days away.
The second meeting.
Second meeting.
Check.
Yes.
Carl, did you hear that?
Charles?
Sorry, I was writing the notes, and I missed something.
The second meeting is 63 days away, which I think means you have to actively waive so that.
Another day to hold the public hearing?
We'll waive for that 63 days, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I checked.
That's the kind of thing that can happen.
Thanks for
If you
checking.
give us the 10 feet, then we'll waive.
Sorry, you're cutting out,
Okay.
All right, I think
That's
we,
fine. Thank you very much.
yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we're going to close the business meeting. Can I get a motion to close? We're actually gonna now move into.
Actually, Chair, I'm sorry. There is a record here. I should say that was a joke. We are waiving the 63 days.
Okay,
next year.
no, that's fine, yeah. That's what we assumed.
All right.
I need a
Thank you
motion to
I'll make a
close that.
motion to end the meeting.
Okay, Marcus made the motion second.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we're now going to move into our actual work session. Okay, so we had the Radigan lot line adjustment, which is just waiting on the filing, right, Rick? That's where because you looked
Yeah,
at
I'm losing track of them. I know that there's nothing, I'm waiting to do it.
There's nothing on Europe, but I think we're just waiting for those filings, and technically they have till September 8th. Borough Hall, that's what you had worked on for us a little bit, right?
Yeah, but that's not the one we just got deeds on that were recorded. And
Right.
That wasn't Borough Hall, I think, right? That was a different one.
It was Borough Hall.
No, that was Borough Hall.
They had to correct.
Yeah.
So
We're
they
so
recorded the deeds.
recorded them.
Are they,
I just reviewed one where they sent us back the recorded deeds.
was it the corrected version or the?
Borough Hall, well, yeah.
That was Borough Hall, that's what you looked
And
at.
then they recorded the ones after I approved, because I had seen the draft and I heard that, and they recorded. So that would mean they are final, they've recorded the deeds at the end of the lot line modification.
Yeah, I had asked Jessica about that, but she's on a leave, so I'll follow up tomorrow. Make sure, okay. Then Defoe and Scherer, we're still waiting on an updated survey. They're still within their deadline. Subdivision applications, our next category, we actually just did the resolution for the Bloom extension, so everyone's clear on that. West Neck Creek Cottages, we're just still waiting on a final application. Jessica and I haven't heard anything further yet. Fowler, we just did, okay, and we know what we're going for next month. Crescent Beach, I received correspondence, right, Christina, on that. They asked for, that was today, I think, and they asked that we not discuss it because they need more time. So, yeah, which is fine. And then the Row minor subdivision, we don't have anything yet passed. We haven't gotten a sketch plan. They're still working on some aspects of that too. I think it had to do with the width of the road. Something like that. White Performance is under the interim attorney review. Town board, yes.
It's on the list,
Okay.
so it may end up over there. It's not-
Actually, that may end up with you. And then hopefully you can help us get that off, DJ. Okay. All right. Okay, now, next order of business is site plan review. So a couple of things I wanted to say. Christina was kind enough to kind of go through and give us a history, just a rough history of site plan review for those board members who are a little bit newer and didn't know the history. I know Marcus was on the board for quite some time, so he'll be able to help us with things that are any information that we're not aware of. And then we had Rick, who looked over the draft. I also assigned David Austin as our planning board member, who was part of that subcommittee. And the subcommittee was Gordon Gooding, who's here tonight, our town board member, Meg Larson, then of course David Austin, Reed Karen, and Stephen Lesquat, right, yeah, Leventhal, sorry. Leventhal, the previous town attorney, I guess, as of today's meeting, or, okay, yeah. So that was the composition of the subcommittee, and we often do that. If like on the wetlands committee, I was a part of that. Since I was already on that, it was appropriate to task David. I thought he'd be a great candidate for that. So, David, if he needed to, can sort of, if you have any questions, he can sort of like tell us how the committee came to some of those decisions. Hopefully you took a look at Rick's notes on it. And let me just get mine out. I think, I'll go first because when I looked over Rick's things, there were two things that kind of jumped out in his that were the same as mine, or what I had noted. So the first thing I tried to do going through it was just imagine myself as an applicant, right? I always look at language, how user-friendly the legislation is written. And one of the first things that I felt, since I am on other committees like WQI and so forth, I've gone through this process of trying to fix applications or whatever. One thing I noticed was that the layout, I guess I felt when I read it, I was looking for more of, this is the intention of this law, and these are the goals. And when an applicant comes forward, here are the things that you need to submit. Here is what the board is going to look for in looking over your application. And I do like, and I approve of their doing an administrative site review, sort of that avenue, and a full review. In fact, we're doing that in the Wetlands Committee as well. Because sometimes applications do come in where they just don't need the full-blown, process. I think it's good to have two different routes there. But again, as an applicant looking at this, I kind of wanted to see maybe like a flow chart, and a very clear way of having those two types of applications and what eyes the applicant needed to do. Third thing was having this timeline with fees. Like I would want to know, okay, if I hit this point and I paid X amount and now it's stalled or delayed or whatever, what are the additional fees that I have to pay? So I guess I wanted to see a timeline with applicable fees. And then the other thing I thought of, which I think you noted also, I wasn't really sure. I mean, I have been part of the conferences, like the preliminary conferences. And I guess when I first started to attend planning board meetings, I actually saw, I think it was the Bloom applicants that came in one time just to talk very casually, nothing formal with the planning board, just to kind of see what they might do. And they hadn't even at that point turned in any application. So I think it's always been like the practice that somebody can come into the planning board and just say, hey, I'm thinking about this, and could you guys guide us? It's also totally appropriate, and it's happened before, where a applicant has come to the chair and, not at a meeting, and just said, listen, I know that you're the chair of the planning board. Can you tell us, what is the expectation in, doing X? And you can sort of guide them prior to their even submitting an application. So I wasn't exactly clear why the preliminary conference has to be in the legislation. Like, to me, that's just a practice that could occur, but it's not like a formal thing. I feel like when the person fills out the application and turns it in, then it goes to the full board, and then it actually comes in for analysis. So those are the only things that I saw when I went through it, that kind of jumped out at me as things I would, if I were the author, I'd want to fix. But so anyone else? No?
Yeah, I had a lot of, I did the somewhat painful exercise of reading the existing
that's pain.
code and this side by side. And while I understand the original intent of this is to bring it to the planning board. So I wasn't sure why so many changes were also made in the general narrative, and some of them were good and some of them I thought were a little confusing. And the whole procedure, which currently is to go to the building inspector and have it funneled to the planning board, seems to have been eliminated. And now the applicant goes right to the planning board, but without any clear idea of what are they coming for, an administrative or a full review? I mean, the tools to make that decision aren't really here. And it seems by eliminating Reed or whoever was managing that, it puts more work on our shoulders, and it makes the process a little more confusing, particularly if it's a situation where there's a concurrent application to it, or the ZBA or wherever. It's now our job to say, no, you have to go here, you have to go here. And also, we've now taken the job of, if there's another review, like a state review involved, we're volunteering to now shunt it over to the state or the county or whoever is reviewing. I'm not sure why we're taking that on. Shouldn't it be the applicant's responsibility through, maybe it's a flow chart, to understand, or through their professional, who else they have to apply to? I don't know why that should be our job.
Yeah, that's why I said it'd be good to have like a flow chart, which I'm assuming you guys are going to do, right?
Yeah, and normally flowcharts are not part of the legislation, right? So the whole idea is, obviously, if the legislation there, then we would do a full flow chart and with a checklist and all that kind of and such.
But there are a lot of instructions now which are part of the legislation, so.
Instructions, yes, but not a flow chart. I mean, I think what we're thinking is like an actual like diagram of if this, then there, then that,
Yeah.
which we did like for the wetlands, but that's actually not part of the legislation,
Right.
right? And I think that's the big difference here is that that's a, how would I put it? I put it that is to help you to make sure you follow the legislation, but it's not the legislation. So I think we thought a lot about that. We actually worked on like trying to think through the flow charts and how is this all going to go. And and try to simplify things and try to keep things so that things are reasonable.
Yeah, I think the problem is it puts a lot of the decisions, which are essentially subjective decisions on what kind of application it is, and they're undefined. As you point out, where are the definitions and where's the purpose? You know, that's been kind of eliminated. So it makes it a hard document to use. But I mean, I think as we edit it, you know, we can fill it in. One overarching question I have is in the purpose statement in the original 109, it says it's, you know, they don't want to impose significant regulatory burden on businesses, which so when you read this, it takes a while to figure out this doesn't pertain to residential properties.
Oh, no, it says very clearly.
Well, it does say it eventually. This says it in the first paragraph. My question is, why? Why don't we do a site plan review of residential development if it's a single property, the same way we did with a business development?
That's not what site plans are for.
Yeah, that's not what.
That's like state legislation.
Well, I don't know. Every residential property I do a site plan. So I'm not sure.
It's not a site plan from as far as the town or county or anybody else is concerned. You have a thing called a site plan, but it's not a site plan.
I'm not sure about that, but I mean, the point of this,
That actually is the case, what David's saying. That's the case here. That's what it is.
that our site plan review only can pertain to
This is-
commercial
This is
properties.
really commercial.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's why that's why we need this and need it edited in place.
Mhm.
And it's also coming back to us because it used to be with us and then it was taken away, as you saw from the history. But in most towns, the planning board is in charge of site plan review.
For commercial.
And it does fall on our shoulders to, you know, screen it and send the person back if it's administrative, because we have now a board of 7 very capable individuals and it should come back to us. So that's why that's why we have to edit it now so that we can put it into play. But it's usually for commercial. Although, okay, but on that note, Rick did have a few good comments about that. What if, like, could this apply for maybe like an agricultural, like, use, maybe commercial, but clearing sort of thing, right? You had some, you
Yeah,
had,
first of all, first thing is, whether you're subject to site plan review should not be subjective. That should not be subjective. That should be clear cut, because it's subject to site plan review, or not.
right,
And usually, normally the intent of site plan review is to review commercial or other non-residential uses. Let's say, let's have a, I don't know, library or something like that. You know, it's not a commercial use, but it's a non-residential use. I would imagine those are the things you want to cover. But I found that, you know, the explanation of what is subject to be confusing. It's like, it's everything except the following. I would not write it that way. That's all I can say. I would be more, the following is subject to site plan review, not everything in the world except these things, which is kind of how it was worded.
yeah.
I agree. And I think some of these paragraphs, like you say, for drainage, for instance, number 8, it says, the proposal will afford an adequate solution to any drainage problems. I mean, I think I know what you mean. That means don't make any puddles on your neighbor, but I think we need to define specifically, you know, okay, well, what's a drainage problem? Instead, I think we should say what steps you have to take to avoid it. Because one person's problem may not be another person's problem. I mean, I think you have to give a technical description of what that is.
Your legislation's going to come.
Well, they're very long.
I know, but if the legislation says you can't, you know, cause drainage problems, that's open to interpretation. What it
100%,
is.
there's going to be some subjectivity
Yeah,
inherent, but I think you're right. It's like, I think what's important is, I think you're right, is being really clear about what needs to have a site plan. I think we, correct me if I'm wrong, we went with kind of what it doesn't, because that seemed more straightforward and less, we wanted to make sure it was broad enough so that it would take care of the things that that are unclear, if that makes any sense. So the idea is,
The challenge for a draft
yeah,
is to draft something that captures everything you want to capture without leaving loopholes.
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
That's the challenge.
Yeah, and so I think that's what was attempted here. Obviously, but yeah, is it subgroup of people, that's why it's being broadened out to this group to look at it in more detail.
Right.
It was, here's a stake in the ground, let's make it a good stake, right?
Can I ask a question? I was wondering, and I'm not sure if this should even be in this document, but it's a question regarding coordination of other decision-making bodies relative to planning board review, such as the zoning board of appeals or the community housing. I'm not sure what that committee is. How does the planning board coordinate the other agencies within the town so that all of these independent decisions are somehow unified? Does that question, have I posed that so that anyone understands?
Well, I think no matter what, if something in the site plan is going to do any construction on it, then it's going to have to go through the building department and get vetted that way, right? So that's just going to happen, right? So there's an assumption here that there's the site plan, but it's going to have a building permit. It's going to have to, I don't think community housing is going to be involved because this is commercial. So it's not the issue there. But zoning board of appeals, potentially, if there's something that they're doing that requires, it would just be required, right? So I think there's kind of, we can't put into this legislation covering every other group, right? So it has to kind of exist within. This is, and I'll jump on my high horse for a second. The best way to do this would be do all the code and rewrite it all. We're not doing that. We're piecemealing it, which means we have to exist within the fact that there's other stuff out there. And so that's kind of, unfortunately, what the
Can I add one thing? So if you had all this within your zoning code, the best way to structure zoning code is you do have to have somebody who makes interpretations in the first instance. Usually that's your building inspector. Building inspector's decisions then are subject to appeal to the zoning board of appeals. That's why zoning boards are called zoning boards of appeals, because before they even dealt with variances, they were supposed to deal with appeals from the chief administrative official, and that's usually the building inspector. So regardless of whether you put it in the same code or not, you probably need the building inspector to make where he needs to. A lot of times it'll be straightforward. But if, for example, an application may need a variance, the building inspector, if there's a question about that, the building inspector should probably be the one telling the applicant, hey, by the way, you need site plan approval, but you're gonna need a variance too.
That's the way the process works is that way. And I think there's an assumption that it's going to continue to work that way. Because again, you don't come in to do a site plan without having planned to do some building. So again, it really starts at the building permit. Caroline.
Does that answer your question, Greg?
Yes, I guess.
Okay.
It sort of goes back to that.
Kind of it happens, but behind the scenes.
Well, it's like, it would be nice if there was a giant big flow chart to explain to somebody walking in how to do all this stuff. That doesn't
But
exist.
there's also not coordination unless something is triggered.
Yeah.
Like we just had the wetlands, O'Sullivan, right, that came for us and went to town board, and then it went to ZBA, so now it's at ZBA, so it's just that the other part of the government would be pulled in when needed, but I don't think it would necessarily, it wouldn't need to go in here.
I think there is a reality of
That was really.
if something came to us as a site plan review, blah, blah, and we realize it really needs, it's a variance, and they haven't gotten to ZBA, we'd raise a flag.
Yeah.
Hopefully it would get caught in the building inspector, but the whole idea is that's why you have layers of,
Yeah, they're still subject to all those other things should they trigger them.
it's painful, but that's kind of the reality of it.
I recognize you had your hand up before, Bill.
Yeah, I mean, just the few comments I had, I think Rick talked about expanding or clarifying legislative intent, if I recall. And I think that's one of the main things that caught me up, because as I went through the different components of it, it said, you will take into account these things, you will give due regard to these things should be considered. And I left with the question of like, but how? right? And so either you correct the legislative intent to be incredibly clear that what we're trying to do is, like, I don't see, be reasonably consistent with the surrounding areas, blah, you know, blah, 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 blah. If it's not going to be in the legislative intent, then when you're talking about landscaping or whatever, you need to put in a slightly more specific language to be a guide on the subjectivity. Not like huge detail, but like a little better guide to say, like, you know, what are we actually generally trying to accomplish here?
Your purposes clause should tell you what the purpose of the legislation is. This was in the current site plan right now.
Yeah.
And I do not favor this, let me agree with you. The purpose of this chapter is to create a simple review process that allows the town to ensure that new or changing businesses do not negatively impact the surrounding area. It's okay, but very, very vague. But which does not impose a significant regulatory burden on business. To this end, both the elements of the procedures are intended to be flexible and scalable based upon the needs of the individual project. The emphasis shouldn't be, we're trying to make this easy for the applicant, because if you want to really make it easy, don't have site plan review. You should explain why you have site plan review. You're trying to preserve aesthetics, you're trying to make sure you don't have parking congestion, you're trying to make sure that people get on in and out of a parking lot safely. Those are your purposes traditionally of site plan review. So that should be set forth in the purposes clause.
Yeah, so I think you could elaborate a little bit on the purposes and then just look at the individual things, like take into account and due regard, and whether there's just a like 3 or 4 word qualifier that gives you the ability to guide you a little bit.
I will say one thing about that is part of the challenge of this is because we have to live within the environment of our current comprehensive plan. So basically, in theory, the comprehensive plan should give us some more guidance about what we want to do here, but that hasn't been finalized yet. But I think absolutely right. Part of that, why we didn't do it, that is, I think that's a great use for this body, is to come up with clarifying that and filling that out. I think that'd be a great addition. And then seeing how it flows, the impact that flows into it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't take the time to try to suggest language, but I'm happy to. But there are plenty of other people that can do that. But and then just a couple of other things. I think the pre-submission conference, it was kind of like, you can put it in there as you can request it, or it doesn't have to be in there at all.
Like, maybe it shouldn't be in there.
You know, like, because I think that, like, you know, either it's going to be known, you can always go in and chat, or you can just say, I put it in there, but you can request it. That's all it is, like, if you want it. I assume the timelines, the building department has been part of the process, and so, like, they're good with that. And then the last thing was, when I read the statement about I think it says something like, nothing will preclude the town from making a joint or shared improvement, you know, whatever. And I was like, whoa, like, if I was a neighbor, that seems like a lot of power. And maybe it's necessary, but the only thing I could think of, and maybe it's implied in the law.
It was in the old.
But then you realize it still requires the neighbor to agree.
Yeah, that just caught my eye of like, ooh, and like, it doesn't say any reasonable improvements, or like there was no qualifier. Maybe that's implied in the law and, you know, kind of thing. But when I read it, I was kind of like,
You could have commercial properties, and maybe you want them to combine.
Like
their access
parking
to their
spaces
property.
or whatever.
But David's right. If the other applicant, if only one is before you, or even I suppose if there are both before you, though you probably have more leverage than. If they won't cooperate, then you probably can't force them to.
Exactly.
You know, because you can't force one property owner to give access over their property to another.
and maybe I missed a line that said that, or it's implied, but when I read it, it seemed like,
It's the reality of law.
I didn't read it.
well, but I think then something should be in there, like, you know, that which the neighbor would reasonably agree,
You
or.
have to be careful in legislation to not put the
Include yourself.
legislation that has already been covered someplace else, because then you get this.
As long as it is, that was just like same thing when I read it.
Okay.
Like I said, when I read it, it was kind of like, ooh, you know.
Right, yeah. There could be some wording that might make it less.
So could we say it's a case of the purpose not necessarily being like as accurate as we like it, and maybe some like restructuring of these sections?
A lot of times, again, the group that was put this together was a diverse group across different groups. And part of it, I think, if the planning board is going to take on the responsibility of doing site plan, then having clarification of what the goals, what the planning board believes are the right goals of the legislation would be a great topic conversation to put in, and then review that with the town board and with the other parties. But I think in some ways, I didn't push to get that done in that group, because I don't think that was necessarily the right group to do it, right? So, because that was just a little working group, right? So it's like, it's going to have to.
Give us a nice.
Also fair enough, when you know in your mind what the goal is, when you're reading it, you're already putting it into it, so
Everybody
that's why
everybody brings their
that's why
different.
people like you bring in a second layer and they say, you already assume, kind of,
And I didn't.
that it was understood, but it needs
And
to.
part of it is because I keep on praying the comprehensive plan gets approved sometime soon, maybe before it, because if that happened, that would help a lot. But if not, we have to live in this
Guide that language.
limbo of like pretending we don't know the new comprehensive plan and it's kind of it makes it hard.
Yeah.
And so,
understand that.
that for me at least was the reason why I didn't push to actually put words in here, because it might conflict with that. It's like, I didn't, anyway.
Yeah, no,
You get the idea.
I get it.
I do believe this group collectively working as kind of in the new committee to review, putting together some wording on this would be great. I think there'd be some value in doing that. I'm not sure how the best way to do that.
Well, I'm happy to give you comments.
Well, it's not me, it's like us. and the other
Okay, well, at this point, is there a point person for controlling the draft and how we're gonna modify it?
That would be me.
Okay, I'll send you
Yes.
Said reluctantly.
I would recommend that you have a draft on SharePoint that all of you can
Exactly.
access, and all of you
Yeah.
put your comments on
Yes.
that draft in SharePoint, so that
Yes,
no one
yes,
person is
yes.
responsible for
Right.
interpreting your comments.
But I can't get there through my BlackBerry, just kidding.
Blackberry.
I'm kidding, I'm saying.
If I want to make it sort of a general comment,
Yes.
but since, and Greg does the same, we read code for a living.
Yeah,
You know,
more
I
than I
spend
do.
hours a day, and, you read New York City building code.
Yeah,
I mean, there's no subjectivity. I mean, it tells you basically, if you could figure out what they're saying, what to do. But, there was this line that says, we can ask for any other information deemed by the planning board to be necessary to determine conformity of the site plan with the spirit and intent of 133, which is the zoning code, which I've read a lot. I mean, there's no spirit of the zoning code. It'll tell you 20 feet or 50 feet,
But you know,
Yeah, so that wording might have fallen over from the old one, like,
Yeah.
we did a lot of this, just so you know, kind of the background. We took a lot of looking at other towns' code as well for their site plan to basically try to learn best practices. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. And so this small group did the best they could within a limited time frame of time.
Right.
But
Well, it's a huge thing you've taken on.
I think but now we haven't. We've now taken it on.
Right.
So let's be really clear. So I think getting that feedback on SharePoint, putting in like, I'd recommend these word changes, having a lawyer review it, that would be awesome. I think that would, and it'll make it a better legislation, which is the whole goal.
Could I just ask you a question?
Yeah.
You might not know this, but
Sure, I don't.
relative to looking at what other towns have done, for instance, Southampton, in their process of a person initiating a site plan for review, what is their sequence of events? Do they go to the building department initially?
Pretty much.
So I guess my question about removing the building department.
We haven't removed the building department. It's not in their legislation, anything about the building department either. It's, again, this is the site plan.
So wait, so I'm asking a question.
Sorry.
I might be incorrect in how I ask.
Sorry.
So just as the building department does sort of an initial review and then sends a wetlands application to us for review, right?
No, they recommend that the wetlands be done and then the applicant sends in a wetlands application. The building
Okay.
department doesn't.
All right, so forgive me for not getting it right, but, okay. Wouldn't it make sense that the site plan review has a similar process so that all of the
It does, and just like in the wetland.
So it is going,
In the
so
wetlands.
that's what I'm confused.
In the wetlands code, and I think even the new code, it doesn't say this comes from the building department making a recommendation of a wet, it's like, it says, we get a wetlands application, right? And what's determines that is based on the legislation of what wetlands are and what the rules are. It's just like the site plan is, it's contained within that. And so it's for the building department, again, in theory, I guess, somebody could go, I want to do a site plan review or a wetland review and not be building anything, which it doesn't make, I don't know how that would actually work, but it's like,
Clearing or something like that, but the idea of having a clearing house is not a bad idea. That would probably be the building inspector.
Meg, I see, Meg has her hand up.
So the process, the way it goes is someone goes to the building department with their plan saying, I want to do X, Y, and Z. I want to build this, I want to modify this, I want to add a kitchen, whatever it is they want to do. The building department takes the plans, looks at them and says, you can't do that, you need to go and get site plan review in order to do that. They write a denial letter saying, these are the reasons why you have to go for site plan review. Then that applicant has to create a site plan review application, which then would come to the planning board. So the building department is one who vets it. So they'll say, you have to go to zoning board to do this, you have to go to. site
Okay,
plan."
that's what I was.
in theory, somebody could just walk up to the clerk's office and do a wetlands application, or walk up and do site plan. But people, it's like, that doesn't happen because it doesn't, they usually always are doing building, right? So
Okay.
I don't know if we need to put it in legislation.
I like the idea of going through the building inspector. For one thing, then the building inspector becomes the central record-keeping authority.
Yeah.
They know what site plan application was made, they know what wetland application made, they have the central registry of that.
I 100% agree, and if we were rewriting all the code, I'd say we'd write that into the overall code of how we do it, but we're not doing all of
But you can
it.
do it for your site plan.
For
But
instance,
the site plan tab, we can't say, you must, can we say you must go to the building department?
Well, the application shall be submitted to the building department.
Not the site plan. The site plan doesn't get submitted to the building inspector.
Well, the building inspector refers to you.
but the old,
Yeah, I don't know who you want to accept the application. You could have the building department accept the application and then hand it over to you.
the previous version of the code said submittal of application, site plan review shall commence with an applicant submitting a site plan review and application vote at the town clerk.
Exactly, that's the way it usually is.
I would use the building.
But you're saying it doesn't go to the town clerk, actually,
No, the site
agreed.
plan review application goes to the town clerk after they submit to the building department says you need site plan review, file an application.
What's submitted to the building department is a building permit application.
Building.
Right.
It's a very separate and distinct application. And based on that application for the building
Yeah.
permit.
They say this requires a site plan.
We're not going to give you a permit until you go to wetlands, go to this, go to this, go to that.
So if they're not constructing anything, they're not gonna,
Is there a way to articulate that simply?
Yeah.
So that someone like me who hasn't read it 500 times, it just doesn't, it's clear.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's that hard. It could be one sentence. I think
Yeah,
we're
I don't know if it
semantics.
comes in, I don't know if it maybe that's whether it belongs in the site plan or belongs someplace else. But
Yeah, we'll put it in flow chart. We do have a flow chart, it's just not part of the.
Yeah.
Well, it was in whether it says clerk or building department, it said, application
And it has to-
procedure, and it told you what to
there
do, and that was
is
removed.
there is a general thing here, where basically everything goes to the clerk. Right, the actual application things all go through the clerk's thing for distribution to the right folks.
But as David says, it's very clear right there. Why should it be?
Yeah, I'm not sure why that was removed, but
Well, it was removed for a simple reason.
Yes.
This is the reviewing body, right? So the application goes to the clerk. And then it goes to the current review. It goes to building department to check the completeness, right? But the completeness isn't set in stone because we have a little leeway, right? During the initial conference, which was the pre-submission conference, we say, okay, we don't need you to depict the drainage because you're not doing anything drainage related, right? So it comes to the building department and he says, okay, we didn't want that, and he says, fine. But then he deems the application complete and it comes to this board that actually has the jurisdiction over the application. And one of the members says, I think drainage is important. And now the applicant is like basically at square one. So some completely independent body is making completeness determination for somebody who has a different jurisdiction. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's just incorrect process.
Which is why we're trying to, but maybe by removing, we didn't put in a right process, we just removed the other one.
This board should be in the completeness of the application, because you are reviewing, you know what you want to review.
It should go to the clerk.
No, the clerk gets it.
She gets it, then she.
She gets it,
but
she reviews
we
it,
would decide.
Yeah,
completeness.
comments,
There's technical completeness measures.
yes.
If there's a document like an authorization, agent authorization form, the initial reviewer, whoever that is, should check to make sure the application is technically complete.
Right.
But the decision about whether or not an application is actually complete, legally, in terms of everything that the reviewing agency might want, because you have the right to ask for things.
Exactly.
That would rest with the reviewing board. So if the site plan is with you, then you make the ultimate decision whether in other words, not, is this form included? Shouldn't come unless that's complete.
Yeah.
But do we have all the information we want? We want more information, this or that.
Yeah.
And so
So
that's the larger completeness question. That should rest with you.
Yeah, and I think it's like completeness with lowercase is done first, just make sure like the basic documents are all there. And then it's completeness with a capital is done here. It's like, that's the actual legal definition.
So are we at a point right now where we can say, if we put this document in SharePoint, that everyone starts to contribute actual sentences? I was like, all of us, instead of we're just going around, let's.
Don't just say, I don't like this.
No, I mean, let's,
You're absolutely right, absolutely.
I think
There was
that-
originally, I think on the original email from you said August 22nd. Is there a timeline that,
It was, we were working on wetlands legislation, which I was
We didn't.
gonna forward to you as well.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see them together.
Yeah.
That's with the attorney still, I think, right?
Is
Well,
it-
they're kind of separate.
They're
Site plan and
separate,
wetlands are separate.
They are separate, but also still being done by this body. And so understanding about process and kind of how we.
The wetlands is just you are just advisory, so you're
Oh,
not
still-
really necessarily advising on a process
Right.
of the wetlands.
Yeah. We haven't gotten back authority for jurisdiction for wetland yet.
And there's no intention of doing that.
Well, we have,
I-
the town board has made that.
I have my own opinion on that.
I'm just asking a question. I
It
don't,
hasn't happened yet.
I mean, you guys do crazy stuff in town board. I don't know.
I don't think our comments on the wetlands are going to be different because we're not the final
Hey, we're gonna
say.
be looking at it
So
both ways. so-
I do.
semantics now,
I
but-
actually disagree.
But is there a,
I think you think about, the way you approach the legislation is very different if you're just the decider to make sure about how it works versus I'm just gonna do advice. So it's like, whatever. You do enter it differently. At least I do. Because if I know that the board's gonna make the final call anyway, then it's like, I'm gonna advise on the legislation. I'm not making sure the legislation is right.
Yeah.
So I really do, at least for me personally, it's like, I'll put 80% effort versus 120%. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, I'm just saying that's.
no, it's just a reality.
I think so.
Yeah.
This came to us first because if my understanding is correct, the intention is that this may be given to us sooner than we get the wetlands back. So therefore, this is at a draft now where we can start to, pick it up.
What's a reasonable timeline to try to get this?
For you to redraft legislation.
Yeah.
I think the request for this board is to send the comments in similar to Rick's. And then
Yeah.
the town attorney, which will be Rick's firm or Rick, probably corporation, will do redrafting.
So you're comfortable with, yes, some actual language suggestions, but it doesn't have to be,
Phrases.
we don't have to be trying to dot or i's. We can say, we're struggling with this, there needs to be more language here or something.
It's a class.
And you guys can take it.
Comments
Okay.
and work, I hate this word.
That's what I was thinking. I mean, I wasn't saying we have to write the whole law over again, but.
Yeah.
Certain aspects of it kind of would point to another code section, which in some cases don't exist. For instance, we say proposed landscaping, buffering, street tree plans. This is what you have to submit, including material, size, quantity, and location. Listed planning shall also be shown. Well, what's the criteria to determine if it's adequate or inadequate?
Well, but that's when it goes back to legislative intent, where it says, trying to create a reasonably consistent scenic, like something like that gives you some basic guide.
One of the things I said in my comments was that you also need standards.
Yeah, I mean, okay, there's a street tree every 20 feet, or something. Without that, every time we get an application, we're gonna be like, well, do you like that? I don't, and it shouldn't be.
I think in reality, it's going to be somewhere in between that if you can put a little bit less blanket subjectivity and a little bit more qualifier in there, it's still going to be, you have to go and look and say like, give it.
I agree, and again, I didn't push hard on that during the drafting because I wanted this body to have a chance to actually kind of lean in about what we think. But again, it has to be within the context of like the rest of, again, it's really hard without an updated comprehensive plan to know, because you could say like, do we want to build a lot of commercial stuff? Already done. It's like, it's hard.
Yeah.
There isn't an easy answer to that.
What prevents us from making recommendations that maybe get incorporated into?
We can't.
That's what we're.
Just like the sentence before, we say stormwater, 2-inch rainstorm over 24-hour period. I mean, that's it. That's what you have to retain.
Yeah.
We should be able to give that level of specificity for anything we're telling people to do.
Let me say something about that. So you want to be like, what is subject to site plan review and what is, that should be very objective, not subjective. But once you get into a review process for whether it's a subdivision or site plan, wetland permit, the word I would use is discretion. That's, it's different, not very different from subjectivity, but the reviewing board has discretion. And so you are going to have judgment calls.
100%.
Certain things like that, by the way, very standard to say required, we want drainage that will handle a 2-inch rainfall in a 24-hour period. That's a pretty standard requirement. And that kind of engineering stuff is more objective. But how much screening to require?
Yeah.
You can't really specify that, there should be one tree, depends on the site.
Yeah, you're not going to say from a distance of 200 feet, you can't see above 4 feet and like, whatever. It's just, you have to be, some qualifiers in there that give you some guidance.
But it's just like the Nordstrom Parkway thing. It's like,
Yeah.
we are explicit about, like, it can't be that explicit on it. And that goes back to, I think you're right, like legislative intent on this is really important to capture. The challenge I see is, again, it's really hard to put legislative intent in this one piece of legislation without much coverage above, other than the existing comprehensive plan. It's hard. And I was having difficulty, I tried to do it, and I had to look at the existing comprehensive plan, and it's just like, so arbitrary. It's not very specific. It's like, we could do that, but I don't know, in all honesty, exactly what's in the new draft of the comprehensive plan. I haven't paid that close of attention because it's not done yet. Because I figured I'm not doing it. I'll just wait till it comes down. But that may dramatically change
No, I think
the context, which makes it hard.
Yeah, it does. I think just as you said that, I thought about a lot of it being like, well, what's reasonably consistent with what's there. But if there's a vision about something going forward that changes that,
The goal is to build up the center.
So, so maybe there needs to just be language that gives you the flexibility if it's a moving target,
Well, why can't it be altered after the comprehensive plan is?
Well, it could, but you could potentially also
Like
include
it's an
language
immutable thing.
that says reasonably consistent with
Well, we can also
existing
amend it.
or
Right.
plans, or something.
Yeah, my thought was, because it's all about, got multiple moving trajectories of things happening, right? It's like, this is where it's at, comprehensive plan's not agreed to yet, so you do it as best you can, with the understanding that once the comprehensive plan lands, potentially you might be going back and amending this. Because we've discovered, we want to change things, though.
That's the purpose of the comprehensive plan, is to guide legislation. So to answer your question, Greg, it could change again, and so could other legislation based on it.
We wouldn't have jobs.
4 years, baby.
But I think, just to bring everybody back to center, because it's just being one at a time, it's 8:25. Do we feel like we're at an adequate point now where we'll put it in SharePoint, everyone can put comments, edits, whatever, and David, anyone that wants to? Okay.
Yes.
And then we'll send it back to them, is that good?
Yes. Yes.
With a,
Yeah.
Are you ready for wetland legislation at the same time, or should we wait until?
Well, I thought it was at the attorney's level for review. It's done? It's done? I'm fine with, but I don't want to speak, I am okay with looking at it, but I ask you gentlemen, if you want to look at the wetlands draft too.
Oh, the wetland, I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah,
I
wetlands.
just heard the beginning part of
Yeah, I
it.
mean, I think realistically commenting on this is into the next few weeks and then wetlands into September, you know,
So,
kind of, you know.
Okay.
I mean, that doesn't mean hold it, get it to us if we have time, but I think that.
I would like to work on the site plan review first.
I'd like to get one done and then move on.
Yeah.
Otherwise.
I think so.
Merging, that's fine.
Okay, I'll yield to you on that. Let's do that first. Let's finish site plan review first then. So hold off on the wetlands. at
Is
least.
the wetlands legislation simply pointing it to us, or is it a rewrite of the whole section?
It's a review.
It's a rewrite. A lot of it was redone.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's
Next.
major change.
That's
Okay.
a lot to-
So that was our last piece of business on the, anyone from the audience, from the Zoom audience? Pam? Anybody out in Zoom land there?
No hands raised?
And has no.
All right, then I'll take a motion to close the meeting. Someone?
Oh, motion that we
Wait, I'm
close.
sorry, Julia?
Yes, Pam, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Yeah, I just have a question about this with the site plan review draft. I mean, will you accept things from the public at this point? And my concern about all of this is that the only person in town who's employed by the town who has been certified as a site plan reviewer is in fact Reed Karen. It is a civil service test you must take. So taking the building inspector out of this legislation seems contrary to state regulations. I'm not really sure I
But he's
understand
not
why the
being-
building inspector's taken out of this when he's the one who's only been the only one in town who's actually taken the test. And I'm sorry, David Austin, if that bothers you,
No,
but
it's
I
not,
think it's an important, well, you're raising your head and turning your head around like, what is she saying? But this is the truth. There are only two people and you can look it up and you can see who took the exam for site plan reviewer in Suffolk County and find out who was certified to do it. And I think that that seems to be a very important point that's being missed in this conversation.
do you know
and
that, you know
that's
that
my
Reed
comment.
was part of the group that wrote this?
Yeah, he was in the.
He was in the first, and I'm sure he will review it again, if we get to the, before the end.
But we're not taking him out of the process.
Yeah, he's also, you hear that, Pam? He's not actually being taken out of the process of site plan review. He's not being taken out.
But it seems like he's been taken out of the legislation that you people are presenting. So that's my concern.
Wasn't in there.
No, I think it says following our approval, it goes to Reed and he
Yeah.
has 20 days or something like that specifically.
But we aren't taking public comment at this point, if I'm correct. By the time it goes to public hearing, then it would be acceptable to do public comment on it. This is just the preliminary, review of the draft.
Okay, that's certainly reasonable. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, no problem, Pam, thank you. Okay, and I think I did have a motion, right, to close it, but just before we, second, and then all in favor? Aye.
Yeah.
Meeting's closed, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.